Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
This survey that I answered, and I received an email saying that I've won $500.
You got your cash.
I just want to let you know, I got my $500. It's in my bank account, and no money was taken out because I never gave them my account number.
Right.
They just sent me an email.
Right. Like Randy Moss says,
straight cash, homies.
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so today we're going to talk about our most memorable playoff baseball moments, and I will give you my definition of memorable in a minute. But before we get to that, you probably recall about a month ago I mentioned to you that I got a letter saying that I had to go to court, and there was a chance that I was going to be selected for jury duty.
Right, I remember. I never actually followed up with you and asked you what happened.
So, thank you for asking. I did go to court, and they tell you that you have to be there at 8:30. I actually was a little bit late. I only got there at 9, but it's good that I got there late because nothing happened between 8:30 and 9. In fact, nothing happened until 12 o'clock. There were like 75 or 100 of us sitting in a room, just waiting around, twiddling our thumbs until around 12 o'clock, maybe even later. So then finally, they bring us all into a courtroom, and the judge is there, and the lawyers are there, and the accused person is sitting there, and the judge explains to us how they actually explained a little bit about what the case is. Apparently, the accused was accused of forcing a minor to participate in sex trafficking.
This is serious.
Yeah, it is. It is. So, so the judge explained how, jury duty is it's something that's very important. Other countries are jealous of the fact how Canada runs their judicial system. So, it's a privilege and an honor to participate in a jury, and it should be taken seriously. So, anyway, she explains all this stuff, and then she explained how she's going to call each of us up one by one because they have to find 12 jurors plus 2 alternates. So they're going to call each person one at a time until they get to 12, until they get to 14. And the thing is, so you have to explain, she asks the same question to every single person. Is there any reason you can't participate on this jury? And you can't just say, I don't feel like it, or I have to work, or whatever. You have to have a good reason. And
work is not a reason. Work is
not a reason. If you're self-employed and you have no other source of income, then that's a valid reason. If you're a student, that's a valid reason. If English isn't your first language, that's a valid reason. So anyway, so she starts calling people up, and I think they had called up 20 something people, and they didn't have 12 yet. So I think I was the 25th person called up. So she asked me the same question. Is there any reason why you can't participate in this jury? I should mention, she had mentioned previously that the trial is going to take about 3 weeks. So you have to be available every day for the next 3 weeks. So I already had plans to go to Montreal, I think 4 or 5 days from that day. And I was going to be in Montreal for about 8 days. So, and this is a trip that was planned for a while. It's not like I could change it. So when she asked, is there any reason why you can't participate in this trial? I said, well, yes, because I'm going to be outside of the province from, September 24th until October 1st. So I didn't say this, but obviously I'm going to miss half the trial. And the reason I'm going away is because I'm going to take care of my elderly father who lives in another province. All this is true. I wasn't making it up. So she said, okay, you're deferred from this case, but you're going to have to come back in about 6 months for another case. I said, okay, fine. So, then I'm supposed to leave the courtroom. And as I leave, another staff member approaches me and says, even though the judge told you have to come back in 6 months, you actually don't have to come back for another 3 years. The fact that you came here today and you received this letter in the mail, just keep the letter. You won't have to do jury duty for another 3 years.
So you're in the clear now.
I'm in the clear for 3 years.
It would have been interesting to hear that case. Let me tell you.
It would have. Actually, I was interested to hear the case, but I can't be there. So, maybe next time in 3 years, like I'll be able to stay and attend the entire trial. Who knows?
The only reason why I'd want to do it is I'd love to see like if a trial, like in real life, is like what we know on like Law and Order or like in the movies. Is it really the same? Like, is like everything we know about the judicial system comes from TV and movies. So I'd love to know if it really is like that.
I mean, I have to tell you, the courtroom did look like the courtrooms you see on television. Like there's a
Right.
section where the jury sits, and
Sure.
there's another section where other people can sort of watch the trial, I guess.
Yeah.
So it all looked legit.
Very cool.
So do we have any listener mail? I know our last episode was about only murders in the building. I'm wondering if we got any listener mail.
Mailbag.
We just got a couple of small notes. Of course, our friend Jesse in Texas. Only Murders in the Building is wonderful. I love both seasons. You knew that Steve Martin and Martin Short would be great, but who knew that Selena Gomez was going to hold her own with them? This show brings me almost as much joy as Ted Lasso. So that's high praise because I know how much, I love Ted Lasso also. And Stephanie from Montreal, love Only Murders. You guys make me laugh every time. She watched with her daughter, and she says her daughter Hope loves Only Murders. And then she finishes by saying, gotta get me some dips.
Is that from the Greek restaurant?
No, yeah, because you know how Martin Short in the show, he only eats dips. He loves the dips.
Right. But from what's his name? Nathan Lane.
Yeah, Teddy Demas's restaurant.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. So that's it. That's all I got for mailbag.
Okay, so let's get into this topic, which you suggested. So maybe you want to explain it a little bit.
So playoff baseball started the last week or maybe more, right? And in the wild card round, just in that wild card round alone, and the first few games of the division series, there's been like 3 really kind of memorable moments, like weird moments that are like that really I was like, wow, this is great that everybody's talking about. It's like this the first thing you talk about if you want to talk about baseball with your buddies or coworkers or whatever. And then I was like, well, why don't we just we should do something similar. So, like Yordan Alvarez hit a walk-off home run in the bottom of the 9th for the Astros. That's huge, right? The Blue Jays epic collapse and and especially the collision in the outfield with Springer and Bichette, like that's wild. And then of course the umpires checking Joe Musgrove's ears for illegal substances. That was completely nuts. Like that was like, I mean, I understand checking like his hat and checking like that the umpires are instructed to do this, right? Like they do it anyways. Like they do it as they come off the field, right? Like you don't see it on camera, but the pitchers are checked. And for Buck Showalter, the opposing manager, to sort of just like say, go check him, he's got something on his ears. And the umpires had to ask him, can I touch your ear? You saw them like sort of asking for permission, and they like touched his ears, and then they're like, no, he's clean. I'm like, okay, like that was weird, right?
I would not want to touch anyone's ears.
No, it was just bizarre. The whole thing was super bizarre. Like I didn't get it. Because like I was talking and invested in this drama in baseball, we thought like, what are some of the most memorable playoff baseball moments that you and I remember watching? Like I told you the category would be like favorite playoff baseball moments. And then you texted me, you're like, could we change it to memorable? Right?
Yeah, because these aren't my favorite. These are things that I remember vividly. They could be good, they could be bad, whatever, but I remember them. Like I didn't have to do any research because I just remember them off the top of my head.
Of course. Yeah. So I kind of I started making my list before we sort of changed the language of the title. So mine is still a little bit more favorite because like I don't have Yankee stuff here. I don't have Blue Jays stuff here. I don't have the teams that I'm not a fan of kind of didn't make the cut,
Number 7.
So number 7, we were 19 years old in 1989. The Oakland A's were a powerhouse. They were like easily the best team in the American League for a good 3 or 4 years. And then they were having this World Series was going to be against the San Francisco Giants, which was amazing because they're basically in the same city. It's like two teams from the same city. And then the A's actually won the first two games. And then before game 3, there was an earthquake. Like, this was like a big deal. You know, never mind, like, if you lived in San Francisco Bay Area, of course it was a big deal. You were in danger and people died. And like, this was a serious earthquake. But I just remember at 19, I was such a selfish little teenager. I was like, but what about the World Series?
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And then, you know, they waited like a week or 10 days between game 2 and 3. Like, they couldn't play game 3 right away. And then, of course, the A's won game 3 and they won game 4. And then that was it, a 4-game sweep. And it's like, really, like, in terms of like the baseball part, like, you can't remember anything that happened in any of those 4 games. Nothing.
Right.
In fact, you know, like, the same pitchers pitched for like game 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? Like,
Of course, because, you know, you only really needed 2 pitchers.
right, like Dave Stewart and Mike Moore pitched both games for like the A's, and then game 3 and 4 again. Like, you can't remember anything that happened in the games, but like, boy oh boy, what a memorable World Series, just because of the earthquake right in the middle. And you know, when you think about the Oakland A's, I said they were the most like dominant team in like the late 80s there, 80s, early 90s. Like, they made it to the World Series 3 years in a row, but they only won one, and that's the only one they won. The most memorable because of the earthquake, but the most forgettable in terms of like what happened. Like, you can't even tell, you don't even know what happened, right? So it's kind of weird team, that Oakland A's team. All right, I talked way too much about the Oakland A's, so let's hear your number 7.
Number 7 for me is much more recent. It's from 2020. I'm sure you're going to remember this. Game 6 of the World Series between the LA Dodgers and the Tampa Bay Rays, when the Tampa manager Kevin Cash took Blake Snell out of the game in the 6th inning, even though he was cruising. In fact, not only was he cruising, I think the top 3 hitters in the Dodgers lineup were hitless against him in that game, and they were coming up to bat, right? Mookie Betts was the next batter. So instead of leaving him in the game, and by the way, Tampa had the lead at the time, he brings in Nick Anderson, who proceeds to lose the game. So, I mean, people are still asking Kevin Cash, why did you take Blake Snell out of that game? I mean, I'm not a fan of either team, so I don't really care. But like, I was so angry because how do you take out a pitcher? I understand now these days everything is analytics, and the decision to take him out of the game, I think, was made 48 hours before the game was even played. So it's not really even Kevin Cash's fault. It's probably the general manager's fault, who told him, you know, once he's faced all the batters twice, you got to take him out of the game. I wonder if he had like a perfect game going, would they still have taken him out of the game? But it was just so frustrating to watch that. So frustrating.
You know, we could do like a whole list of just the worst pitching changes in the history of baseball. There's probably like a huge long list. And we texted during the week, like, managers nowadays, like, they don't know what's going on. They overmanage. They all want to be the smartest person in the room. You know, like, I know more than you. You're right. That decision was bad, and it was made even before the game even started, which actually makes the decision worse, because then why do you even need a manager there? Just have a computer program and a list of decisions. But the thing that made that decision worse is that he brought in this guy Anderson, who couldn't get anybody out.
Right.
Like, the
Nick
whole
Anderson actually
playoffs.
had a really good regular season that year, but he was not good in the playoffs.
No, like, every game he was brutal. So like, it was like, what, you're taking out this guy who you know is going to get everybody out, and you're bringing in a guy who you know is going to get lit up. So like, your flow chart should be out, like, torn up and thrown out.
At the time, I remember I said to you at the time, like,
Yeah.
the manager can just stay home and manage, you know, from his cell phone. Like, he doesn't need to be in the dugout if that's how he's going to manage.
Number 6.
Number 6 for me, it's very memorable. I'm sure you know it. I mean, you know all the things on my list. I don't have to remind you of them. It's the 1992 National League Championship Series, Game 7, Pittsburgh Pirates versus Atlanta Braves. This is when Atlanta was in the West, right? And of course, you know the play. The pinch hitter for the Braves was backup catcher Francisco Cabrera. And he came through with a big hit, and Sid Bream had to score from second base. And the ball was hit to left field for Barry Bonds. This play, it was like, it even to like, when I watched it in real time, It was like it happened in slow motion because Sid Bream is basically running in slow motion when he's at top speed. But they waved him home. The throw came in from the outfield, safe at the plate. The Braves win the series and go on to the World Series. The Pirates lose, and the reason why historically looking back now, like the Pirates were so good there in the early 90s. They were a great team. Bonds, Bonilla, Van Slyke, Drabek, like they had a great team. They were at the top of the division all the time. Playoffs, like they could never get over the hump. After this series, after this 1992 championship series, the Braves won 18 more division titles, 2 World Series, and 2 other World Series appearances that they lost. The Pirates have had 26 losing seasons out of 30 seasons.
That's a loss.
So like the tale of 2 franchises, you know? Like what would have happened if the Pirates would have went to the World Series in 92? Maybe Bonilla was gone in 92, by the way. He already had signed with the Mets. But like maybe Barry Bonds stays and doesn't go to the Giants. Maybe they keep that team together.
All right. Well, all of mine are much more recent than all of yours.
Good. Mine are all flashbacks.
So I'm going to stick with the 2020 World Series again.
Oh my God. Really?
Except this time I'm going to talk about Game 4. This is also Dodgers versus the Rays. And this is the one where Brett Phillips, who no one has ever heard of,
oh yeah,
he hits a walk-off single to win the game. But it's not just a regular walk-off single. So he gets a single and the tying run scores. But then Chris Taylor bobbles the ball in center field. So because he bobbles the ball, Randy Arozarena tries to score. And as he's coming from third to home plate, he trips and falls. Literally trips and falls.
It's unbelievable.
Right.
It's unbelievable.
Then the throw, Chris Taylor finally throws the ball in, but it's not a good throw. And the Dodger catcher, Will Smith, actually drops the ball because I guess he's looking out of the corner of his eye and he sees Randy Arozarena barreling in on him.
Bearing down
right?
on him, yeah.
So he drops the ball. So Arozarena has time to get up and come and score the winning run. And the Rays win the game. Like a million crazy things happened on that play. Every time I watch it, I still can't believe all the things that had to go wrong for Tampa to win that game. And unfortunately, they ended up losing the series. But that game that play was crazy exciting. I'll never forget that play ever.
I remember calling you like the next day and we were just talking about it. It was like as it unfolded in real time, it was just like what I was just like, what in the hell just happened? Like what just happened? Like you said, it's just like a string of events that like little things that all had to happen for it to work out. And then of course the celebration of Brett Phillips after was epic also. Like this guy's they released him this year, I think.
I'm not surprised he's not on the team. I think going into the game, he was 0 for 2 in the postseason going into that game.
Yeah.
In the regular season, his batting average was somewhere around 200. I mean, it might have been under 200. I don't know.
He was the last player on their roster and the last player on their bench to hit, but
I mean, I'm surprised he even was on the postseason roster. They couldn't find anyone better than him.
Who knows? Oh, well, anyways, look, I hope the rest of your list is not from the 2020 World Series.
No, I'm done with 2020 for now.
Number 5.
So number 5 is from the 1991 World Series, Game 6. It's Kirby Puckett's 11th inning home run to force Game 7. And part of what makes this call so epic is part of what makes this play so epic is the call by the announcer. I think it's Jack Buck, right? He's like, and we'll see you tomorrow night,
Right, I remember that, yes.
Yeah. So, they force Game 7 and then, Game 7 actually could also be a memorable moment. I have it in my honorable mentions because Jack Morris throws a 10-inning complete game, and the Twins win 1-0 on Gene Larkin's pinch hit single. Gene Larkin, no one ever heard of this guy, and they win the World Series in the 7th, like 1-0 in 10 innings in the 7th game. But Kirby Puckett's home run, and he also had a huge game that day. He had a triple also in that same game in Game 6. Kirby Puckett just held the Twins on his back. The Twins in the late 80s, 90s are such an underrated team. They won 2 World Series, right? They won in 87 and 91. And I just love Kirby Puckett, so I had to put him on the list.
Okay.
Rest in peace, Kirby Puckett. He's not with us anymore.
Okay, so next on my list, I go all the way to 2019.
Oh my God. Well, at least we're covering our bases here because I'm going back in time and you're staying in the present.
Right. Well, I mean, my long-term memory is not that sharp, so I don't remember things, before 2018 or something.
So when you're doing your list, you're just like, what are the last 7 things I remember?
Exactly. So this is not from the World Series. This is from the ALCS, Game 6 in 2019 between the Yankees and the Astros. And this was when Aroldis Chapman was lights out. You couldn't hit this guy. So you'll recall that in this game, Jose Altuve hits a walk-off home run off of Chapman, which sends the Astros to the World Series. And
Is this the play where they want to take off his shirt?
I think it is. So the thing is, they show Chapman's reaction, as the home run is leaving the yard, and he's stunned. He can't believe it because no one has been able to hit him, right? And it's almost like he's saying, how did he know what I was going to throw? Which, we later found out, whatever. But the look on Chapman's face is priceless to me. I'll never forget the look on his face. He's like sort of smiling. He's obviously not happy, but he's like smiling like, how did he just do that? How did he just hit a home run off me? And it wasn't like just a barely, like this ball was still traveling maybe even today. So I'll never forget that.
Yeah, that is the play that sort of everyone knows about. It's not exactly the play that sparked the investigation into the Astros cheating and stealing signs, but it's the play that everyone remembers because they asked him about the players on his team were trying to take off his shirt and he was trying not to, and then he said, "Oh, I'm very modest," which is crap, and there's all this speculation that he had something in his shirt, it's like a buzzer. Well, that was never proven, but it just sparked more rumors than it should have.
Number 4.
So number 4 on my list, Josh, it's very hard to have a Montreal Expos moment when we're making a list of playoff appearances because they were only in the playoffs 1 year, right? So in that series, the Expo, it was a 5-game series back in 81 because they had to play a mini division series because of the strike. So the Expos played the Phillies. They ended up beating the Phillies 3-2. And during that 5-game series, Steve Rogers actually ended up beating Steve Carlton twice head-to-head, which was obviously the huge difference in the series. And then Rogers won Game 5 and actually got the winning hit in Game 5 to propel the Expos to their first NLCS. There's this scene, and I'm going to give you full disclosure. I don't remember seeing it live, although I must have because I definitely watched the game. But it's been celebrated here in Montreal often with a Montreal Expos fan in Philadelphia coming near the front row, handing Warren Cromartie a Canadian flag. And then Warren Cromartie paraded around the field a little bit, holding up the Canadian flag. And that is one of the most iconic moments, in the Expos history. It's something that Expos fans all kind of know and remember.
All right, so now we go to 2016. World Series Game 7 between Cleveland and Chicago. Obviously, this is the first time the Cubs won a World Series in 108 years, so everyone remembers that.
This is such a great playoffs and such a great World Series.
Well, so the whole series was crazy good because it went back and forth. It went 7 games, and I wasn't a fan of either team, and yet I felt stressed every game. I'm not sure how or why, but in Game 7, what happens is, so Cleveland had 3-1 lead in the series, by the way. So it goes all the way to Game 7, and Cleveland is down by 2, I think, in the 8th inning. Yes, they're down by 2 in the 8th inning, and Rajai Davis, who is a very good base stealer, but not exactly a home run hitter, hits a 2-run home run off of Aroldis Chapman. And again, this is when Aroldis Chapman was lights out. So the fact that he hits a home run is insane. So that ties up the game for Cleveland. It ends up going into extra innings. So in the 10th inning, the Cubs take the lead by scoring 2 runs in the top of the 10th inning. Then in the bottom of the 10th, Cleveland scores a run to make it close, but they can't score a second run, so Cleveland loses. Chicago wins the World Series. But what you probably recall is that Joe Maddon did not know how to use his bullpen at all. They won the series. They won the series despite Joe Maddon because he made so many mistakes the way he used Chapman and the way he used his bullpen.
Look, I like Joe Maddon. I think he's fine. but like he is the most overrated manager. Like people hold this guy up like as if he's some kind of like super genius. Maybe it's because he wears those weird nerdy glasses. Like they think he's like some kind of like he's different. He has this aura like he knows stuff that you don't know. And like he's so overrated. Oh my god, it's ridiculous. He completely butchered. It was like it's amazing that the Cubs won. You know,
It is. It really is.
yeah, yeah. And I know you said you weren't rooting for either team, but like I was definitely rooting for the Cubs. I think most people were rooting for the Cubs just because of the, finally bring a championship to Chicago. Although Cleveland is the next longest suffering team, right? So
What I forgot to mention, and I'm pretty sure it was in Game 7, there was this a long rain delay, which stressed people out even more, right? I'm not sure if the rain delay was in Game 7 or Game 6, but there was this rain delay, and like you're already on the edge of your seat, and then you have to wait through this rain delay.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
yeah, that's wild.
Number 3.
All right, so number 3, we're going to talk about one of the most famous plays in the history of baseball, and it's only number 3 on my list. This is the 1986 World Series, Game 6, Mets, Red Sox. And we all know what happened. We've all seen the play 1,000 times. If you've seen the movie, what's the movie with Drew Barrymore and
Fever Pitch?
Fever Pitch. I mean, in Fever Pitch, like it's Jimmy Fallon like goes into like when he breaks up with Drew Barrymore, they find him in his apartment and he's got the Bill Buckner ground ball play on a loop. And he's just watching it over and over. And when his friends come in, they're like, "How did you get this? This is supposed to be banned. You're not even supposed to have this on tape." It's like contraband. He's like watching it's like he's watching something illegal by watching the Game 6 of the 86 World Series. It's such an iconic play that like, look, I'm telling you about Fever Pitch. In Seinfeld, they talk about it, right? When he becomes friends with Keith Hernandez and Elaine is like, "I met this guy at the bar, Mookie." And they're like, "You met Mookie?" Like it's just so like, it's very, very iconic play. And, we all know that the ball went through Buckner's legs and the Mets ended up winning Game 6, actually in extra innings. People have very bad memories about what happened here. Buckner's play tied the game for the Mets. It didn't win the game for the Mets. The game continued. And to this day, Bill Buckner gets public enemy number 1. What about the rest of the team? What about Bob Stanley who threw the wild pitch right before? What about there's a million things that happen. Like, yes, that's a really bad play and it's a routine grounder that anybody could pick up, but he didn't. And then of course there's Game 7. Like, they went to Game 7. The Red Sox still could have won Game 7. What happened? They didn't. The Mets pulled it out. There's a really good 30 for 30 on that whole thing. And
it reminded me of another memorable play, which is not on my list, but I'm going to mention it now anyway. The Steve Bartman play where Moises Alou doesn't catch the foul ball because Steve Bartman sticks his glove out. That probably should be number 1 on my list, but I completely forgot about that one also.
That's also the same kind of circumstance in that, like, Alou was trying to catch the foul ball. The fan obviously caught it and interfered with him. But then everyone blames that on the loss. No one talks about that inning, right after that foul ball. There was 2 strikes on the batter. They needed 1 more strike to get out of that inning. How many runs scored after that? 4 or 5?
I think the shortstop made an error on the next play, right?
Yeah, they completely imploded after that one play, and then that was it. Like, if you're that good, if you're a championship caliber team, which obviously they're not, you can overcome a weird play where the outfielder can't catch a foul ball, right?
So, anyway, my actual number 3, and this one is probably the most obscure one on my list. I don't even know if you're going to remember this. Mm-hmm. It's from 2011. It's from the World Series, Game 6. Texas Rangers versus St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh, I mean, this is one of the most memorable World Series, to be honest.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of lead changes, a lot of home runs, a lot of crazy stuff going on. Yeah, keep going.
So the Cardinals ended up winning this World Series in 7 games. But in Game 6, the Cardinals are down. And they're down in the series, obviously. And then in the bottom of the 9th, David Freese drives in a run to tie up the game. David Freese was not he's not exactly a Hall of Famer. But on this particular day,
He was a good player for the Cardinals, especially for those couple years. He was a good player, but that's it.
The reason I mention this in my list is because I remember watching this live. So he drives in a run in the bottom of the ninth to tie up the game. Then it goes into extra innings. And then in the 11th inning, who wins the game with a home run? David Freese. Like, this guy, he could have gone to the Hall of Fame just based on this one day.
Oh, I mean, for Cardinals fans, David Freese is like one of their biggest heroes ever.
For sure.
He completely won them the World Series.
100%. I mean, they still had to go and win Game 7, but
Yes, of course. But I was 100% cheering for Texas. I'm not a Cardinals fan. Obviously, NL East ties with the Expos run deep, and I've never been a fan of the Cardinals. Texas was this kind of up-and-coming team. Like, they had a bunch of fun players to watch. Elvis Andrus was a shortstop. I really liked that guy, and David Freese just killed them. He was unreal. They couldn't get him out.
They couldn't.
Number 2.
All right, so we're at number 2. So you can't talk about the most memorable playoff moments in baseball without talking about the 2004 American League Championship Series between the Red Sox and the Yankees. Obviously, the first time that a team has come back down 3-0, the Red Sox-Yankees rivalry hit its peak in 2004. 2003, I mentioned earlier, Aaron Boone broke the Red Sox hearts with a home run in the Game 7 of the ALCS that year, and it seemed like it was over. And then, of course, they were down 3-0. Like, down 3-0, it seemed like that's it. It's just going to be this Red Sox team, even though they were loaded and they had a great team, they just weren't going to do it. And the Yankees were just too good. And then you can point to a lot of things in this series. So I want to give you one moment, and I'm going to give you one moment, but like, it's a bunch of moments really strung together. Game 4, David Ortiz hits a walk-off. I don't know if it was a double or a home run. I think it was a home run. And then there's Dave Roberts with the stolen base in Game 5, right?
That is the moment. That's right there. Like, I had it on my top 7, this moment, and I bumped it off for something else.
What's amazing about that Dave Roberts stolen base in Game 5 is they put him in as a pinch runner. Everybody in the stadium knows he's stealing. Every player on the Red Sox knows he's stealing. Every player on the Yankees knows he's stealing. And still he's safe, right? And then, so I'm going to Game 6 because Game 6 is really like the pivotal game. The Yankees are still in control. They can still win this series. And then who goes out there? Curt Schilling, like the workhorse of the Red Sox. And this is the famous bloody sock game, right? Like, who knows what the trainer and the team doctor did to Schilling's ankle. I don't know what they did. They did some kind of DIY surgery, froze his ankle up. I don't know what they did. But like, in the middle of the game, the camera's zooming in on Schilling's foot, and there's blood coming through his sock, and he's pitching. And it's really like so dramatic. It's like from a Hollywood movie, He's pitching with this bloody foot, and then they win Game 6, and he pitched 7 innings in that game, and that was enough for them to win. And I don't know if you remember, like, no one talks about the big hero offensively for the Red Sox in Game 6, because they won that game 4-2, was Mark Bellhorn, who was actually a really...
See, this part I don't remember at all.
He was a decent player for the Red Sox. He used to play second base. Mark Bellhorn hit a home run in that game. That was the decisive blow. And then, of course, they go on to win. Game 7 wasn't even... Once they won Game 6 and got the series to 3-3, in my mind, I was like, there's no way they're losing Game 7. And then, of course, they killed them in Game 7. I forget what the score was, 10-3 or something. Like, Johnny Damon hit a grand slam in the second inning, I think, and it was over. That's like the most memorable playoff series for sure in my mind. Like, as a series, like, that's something I'll never forget. And you know what's interesting? There's so many great 30 for 30 documentaries about stuff, and they did one on this series, and I like it fine, but it's really not a great documentary. I just don't like the way it's done. But it does give you a good, like, play-by-play sort of like the key moments of the comeback, Anyways, I mean, that's, for me, if we had to do the most memorable series, that's number 1. I still have a moment that beats this in terms of just the one moment, but we'll get to that next. So we'll hear your number 2.
So number 2 is from 2007. So this is actually what happened in 2007. The San Diego Padres and the Colorado Rockies ended up with identical records at the end of the regular season, and they had to play a 1-game tiebreaker game. They called it the National League Wild Card Tiebreaker Game. That's what they called it. So Technically it's postseason. So they played this one game, and The game ended up going 13 innings. The Rockies won the game 9-8 in 13 innings. So I don't know if you remember this. The winning run.
I don't remember it at all, and I don't even remember that these teams played.
Well, if I tell you the play, you might remember it. And if you go Google it, you will remember this. So Matt Holliday was on the Colorado Rockies at the time. He was on third base, and there was a sac fly. So he tags up from third and scores the winning run, to send them to the postseason. Except that he slides head first. And to this day, this was 2007. We're now in 2022. He still hasn't touched home plate. If you go back and look at the replay, he doesn't touch home plate because the catcher, who I think is Michael Barrett, blocks the plate, but he drops the ball. So Holliday could have gone back and touched the plate. You know how sometimes they miss the plate and they go back and touch it, but he didn't. And the umpire called him safe. But if you go back and look at that replay from any angle you want, Matt Holliday still has not touched home plate. And so that game should still be going on right now.
Number 1.
So I think you know what my number 1 is.
I'm not sure what your number 1 is, to be honest.
It's the 1989 World Series Game 1.
So I wasn't going to guess that.
It's Kirk Gibson's home run off of Dennis Eckersley.
That's a great pick, by the way.
To me, this is the greatest home run in baseball playoff history. It's one of the greatest plays in baseball. It is. I mean, that's why I'm making the list. I'm obviously telling you it's my favorite and most memorable play in playoff history. That was the whole point of the list. I still remember watching this game live, and I mean, I told you when we were at the beginning, the Dodgers, the 1989 Dodgers, are one of the worst teams ever to win the World Series. They were not good. They had exactly 2 good players on their team. Kirk Gibson, who didn't even play in the World Series because he was injured, and Orel Hershiser. That's it. And Orel Hershiser won them the World Series. He was completely unhittable. Every time he took the mound, no one could touch him. And the momentum that this Kirk Gibson home run in the bottom of the 9th off of Dennis Eckersley. Now, I don't know if people remember. I don't know if you remember. Dennis Eckersley was unhittable. This guy was with the most dominant, when we talk about dominant closers, this guy never ever blew a save. And I know this is the 3rd or 4th time I'm mentioning 30 for 30, but there is one all about the 89 Dodgers, and Eckersley very graciously is part of the interviews. He doesn't shy away. He doesn't say he doesn't make excuses. He blew it. He really blew it. He had Kirk Gibson he had 2 strikes on him. Gibson could barely move. His swings were brutal. There's no way in any universe that's rational that he should have been able to get a hit, let alone a home run. And Eckersley, there's theories about there he tried to embarrass him. He threw him a slider. He tried to make him look. If he would have just thrown him fastballs, that would be the end of it. But he threw him a breaking ball. Gibson timed it and took what looked like half a swing, to be honest. And the ball goes out, and then of course Gibson's reaction as he's rounding the bases, and the whole call by the announcers and Vince Scully, and it's just, everything is just so amazing about that play. And I'm not a Dodgers fan. I'm not. I do like Kirk Gibson, not only for this, I like him as a player, but it's such a great, memorable baseball playoff moment.
I remember where I was watching that game live, actually.
Me too, yeah.
By the way, I think they had spoken to Eckersley, I don't know if it was a day before or a few days before, and they were asking him about Kirk Gibson, because everyone knew that Gibson was injured and he couldn't really run. In fact, he couldn't run at all. So I think Eckersley said something like, well, the only way he's going to be able to get a hit off me is if he hits a home run, because he can't run to first base. And sure enough, he hit a home run.
There's great stuff in that documentary about they had video, they had but now they have all the analytics, but this is 89. They didn't have the same stuff. They knew that Eckersley tended to throw this slider when he was ahead in the count. It was a habit. There's so much inside info, and the whole thing about Gibson's taking practice swings in the behind the dugout, in the
clubhouse,
batting cage
underneath,
and then they send the trainer out, and he's tell Lasorda that Gibson's ready to hit, he can go, and then Lasorda's the whole thing is nuts. The whole thing is a soap opera. It's crazy.
All right, so I guess I have to tell you what my number 1 is now.
Yes, let's hear it.
So remember I said that these are memorable moments, not necessarily good moments.
Oh no. Oh no, Josh.
There is no more memorable moment than Blue Monday.
Oh God.
October 19th, 1981, Expos Dodgers. Rick Monday hits a home run in the 9th inning off Steve Rogers to send the Dodgers to the World Series. Like the saddest moment in Expos history. Except for maybe the day where they actually left Montreal.
Yes, the last day of the franchise, like in 2004, obviously that's worse, but this was terrible. Like this was terrible.
But you'll never forget it.
No, I mean, and the crazy thing is like people give Steve Rogers a lot of crap because, well, they give Fanning a lot of crap for bringing in Rogers, and then Rogers gets the blame. But Rogers was their best pitcher by far. He was the reason why they made it this far. We have years and years of examples from 1981 to the present of dominant starting pitchers coming in relief. Like
sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't work. Like with Madison Bumgarner, it worked.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work.
And the crazy thing is the Expos got a couple men on base in the bottom of the 9th. I don't know if you remember, Carter walked or singled, and then Larry Parrish, I think, got on base.
Wasn't Jerry White the last batter?
Yes, Jerry White was the last batter. He had a ground ball either to first or the right side anyways.
By the way, Steve Rogers is the only Expo to play his entire career on the Expos.
The only Expo ever? No, there has to be some that have just short careers. Like
no. He's the only Expo to play his entire career on the Expos.
Oh my God, I got to check that.
You can check it. It's true. It's a fact.
But there's no guy that played like 2 years and then retired.
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure. I did look this up once.
Oh my God. Okay, I'll trust you. I mean, if there's ever anyone to trust about stuff like this, it's you. I mean, so I can't believe you put that at number 1. I can't believe that.
Well, it's the category is memorable, and that is memorable.
Yes.
And you're not ever going to forget that.
100%. 100%. It changed the course of a lot of things. Like I mentioned before about the Pirates. I mean, the Expos were not down and out as a franchise after that because we were still good in 82 and just felt, not as good, but we were still in contention in 82. 87 and 89 Expos were in contention. 87 was like a miracle year, like where we were in contention right up to the end. 89 was the Mark Langston trade. We were still good. And then of course the 93, 94 Expos, let's not even talk about that. I mean, but it's not like not making it to the World Series killed us because we were still good after that. But for the Carter, Dawson, Raines, Rogers nucleus, like 81, I mean, like that was it. That was our chance, right?
That was it. They've never been closer to the World Series than that.
That's it. So, I mean, I have some honorable mentions.
Go ahead.
I mentioned Jack Morris already, 10-inning complete game to win Game 7. That's obviously huge. How about Roy Halladay pitching a no-hitter in the playoffs? That for the Phillies, that was also huge. It's incredible that neither of us, Josh, put Joe Carter's home run on our list.
I mean, that really wasn't meaningful to me.
No, it wasn't meaningful to me either. I mean, I wasn't cheering for the Jays. I was kind of cheering for the Jays because I actually hated those 93 Phillies with a passion. Like, I really detested the 93 Philadelphia team. But like, I mean, if you pulled 100 Canadian baseball fans, random baseball fans all across Canada, don't even put people from Toronto, I guarantee you Joe Carter's home run is in everybody's list of most memorable plays.
Of course.
And that's a great call also by the Jays announcer. Touch 'em all, Joe. You'll never hit a bigger one. That's a great announcer call. I had David Freese on my honorable mentions, Josh. So
that's funny.
I was right with you there. Reggie Jackson, although I was a little kid, 3 home runs in one game against the Dodgers in the 77 World Series. So those are my honorable mentions.
So I had the Derek Jeter flip on my honorable mentions. And I had the 2004 ALCS where Dave Roberts steals the base on my honorable mentions. And a few others on my list. Do you remember the game? I think it was Yankees versus Baltimore Orioles, where Jeffrey Mayer, a 12-year-old kid, interferes with the ball and they call it a home run for Derek Jeter. But Today, it would not be a home run if it happened today.
What's his name was the outfielder? He's a former Expo. Tony Tarasco.
Right.
Tony Tarasco was the outfielder.
Right. And then the other one on my honorable mentions is from 1985. I don't know if you remember Kansas City versus St. Louis, where
I know exactly the play you're talking about.
Don Deckinger, or is Denkinger, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. The umpire makes a brutal call, which today they would have reviewed it and they would have seen that it was a brutal call. And, just
if we had like instant replay review, the St. Louis Cardinals would have won the 85 World Series and not the Kansas City Royals. Like,
Correct.
honestly, that's like that. It was that much of a bad call. Like,
Correct.
I don't think you can go back and say if you did video review on every World Series in history, you change the outcome of the World Series. I mean, off the top of my head, this is the only one where the outcome immediately changes on one umpire call.
For sure.
All right. That's our most memorable playoff baseball moments. I love talking about baseball. Every time we do a baseball podcast, I actually think we should change the format of our whole podcast and just do baseball. But
we can, but we're going to run out of stuff eventually.
The Skip and Josh podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter and go to Facebook to like the show page. And now for some final thoughts from the guys.
So the NHL season started this week, and all these teams are playing their first games of the season. Montreal opened the season at home on Wednesday, and you know how everyone talks about how anytime they do a pregame ceremony in Montreal, they do it really well. I'm not sure I agree with that. They used to do it really well. I don't know that they do it really well anymore. And this year, the player introductions were way too long. Like, they just dragged on so long. There was too much time between players. It's like the game was supposed to start at 7. I think it started at 7:30 or something. Who knows?
yeah, it was way long.
It's just like, I mean, I get it. You want to introduce the players. It's the first game of the season. Okay, fine. But you don't need to spend a minute on each guy.
Yeah, I get you. But there's some interesting stuff at the beginning of the hockey season. Do you have any thoughts on like the Canadians having the RBC logo, the Royal Bank of Canada logo on their jersey? Like, this is new, right? Like,
I mean, it doesn't look good. I think honestly, no logo would look good because you're not used to seeing an ad on the jersey. But every team does it now. Teams in the NBA do it.
Yeah.
I think if they had picked a sponsor, like for example Scotiabank, whose colors are red and white, it wouldn't have looked as bad because at least it would have blended in with the colors of the uniform. But because they have a blue logo on a blue and gold logo on a red uniform, it sticks out like a sore thumb.
Maybe it'll look better on the white, but I don't really care. But there's some fans like these old purists that are up in arms. How could the Canadians have a logo on their jersey? It's as if like, oh my God, that we broke one of the 10 commandments, Who cares? Let them do whatever they want.
Exactly.
And the other thing, I don't know if you noticed, like, have you watched the game so far in the NHL? The NHL has like on the television broadcast, well, I mean, I think it must be for every team, but I know it's happening on the Canadians. They have these dynamic ads on the boards.
I did see that. Yes. Yeah.
Like, in baseball, they have the green screen right behind the home plate and they can put any ad on there. So they're doing that on the boards in hockey, which is really difficult because the game is moving like crazy. It's not like a static image.
The technology is impressive.
Yeah, they did a pretty good job because it looks pretty good, but except for like when the players skate sort of in front of it or when you see it like on like a close up, like I think there's still stuff that they have to fix, but it's kind of impressive that they're able to do this. So hats off to like the technology behind this.
I'm surprised it took them this long to do it actually, because baseball's been doing it for a long time.
They wanted to do this. Apparently, they wanted to do this 6 years ago. They had a plan, and the NHL said we're only going to do it when the technology is there for us to do it well, and now they're doing it. So good for them. All right. Well, it's always great talking to you, as always, especially when we talk about baseball, because honestly, I could have gone on for a lot longer on every one of our 14 picks. We could have dissected each one a lot more. But it's so much fun to talk about playoff baseball. All right, that was great, and I'll talk to you next time.
Have a great week.